One feature missing from Cloud SQL and Google Cloud is a user interface. If you're trying to connect to your Cloud SQL instance, you need to create a proxy from your local machine. But this can be a problem if you're trying to give access to someone who is not technical, or if you don't have your computer with you. For example, if you're trying to connect from your phone. In this video, we are going to create a Cloud SQL instance and then install and configure a phpMyAdmin web UI for it. phpMyAdmin will be deployed on a Compute Engine VM, and if you want to follow along, you will need a Google Cloud project with billing enabled and also a DNS zone that you can add the entries to. All the URLs relevant to this video will be linked in the video description below. And if you want to support the channel, please like the video or consider subscribing. There is a lot of Google Cloud content already on the channel and more is coming up. Thank you. We are going to start by creating our Cloud SQL instance. We have our Google Cloud project in here with the billing enabled. And we can just navigate to Cloud SQL. I use the search bar to navigate more quickly between different Google Cloud projects. Products. There are a lot of them. So in here, we just click on Create Instance. We are going to use MySQL. Here, it's already pre-populated with another instance that I made. But let's just call this one SQL Web UI, SQL-Web UI. And we need to generate a password. And you save this password somewhere on a file. I will copy it somewhere off screen. We will need it later. Actually, it didn't copy. Hold on. Yeah, like that. Database version MySQL 8 is good. If it's production, you should leave it to production. But for us, I'm just going to do development. And let's see, configuration details. Yeah, that is fine. For region, I'm going to pick the region that's closest to me. To you, it will be different. Single zone, we don't need highly available. And here in configuration options, we need to change because the defaults are not good for what we're trying to do. So machine type, yeah, by default, they will deploy a machine type that is very expensive. You can, if you search for a Cloud SQL pricing, you can do a better estimate of how much it will cost you. Just for this demo, I'm going to do the smallest machine possible. Unfortunately, they don't provide a price estimate in here like they do with other projects. So if you just leave the default, it might end up being more than $100 a month. So be careful with that. Storage, we can do SSD. Again, we don't need 100 gigabytes. We'll just do 10. Connections. So for this, we will do private IP. I have another video where I discuss the difference between these two and see how you can connect using both methods. So we do private IP and we do the default network. And we need to set up this private services access connection. We just enable the API. And in here, we can use an automatically allocated IP range. This looks good. We do create connection. I skipped ahead a couple of minutes while the IP range was created, but now we can continue. Yeah, I think the rest of the details are fine. So now we can just click on Create Instance. So yeah, it will actually take quite a bit of time for creating these instances, probably like 10-20 minutes. But in the meanwhile, we can continue by creating the Compute Engine VM. So, but first we will need to reserve a static public IP. So we go to VPC networks, also using the search bar. And in here under IP addresses, we will do reserve external static IP address. We need to give it a name. It doesn't matter that much. Let's call SQL UI-IP. And for a region, it will be the region where we're also going to deploy the Compute Engine VM. For me, it will be US West 4, but you can choose another one. It won't be attached to anything at the moment, and we get this warning messages that IP addresses that are not attached are billed at a higher hourly rate, but we will attach it to Compute Engine VM shortly, so it's not an issue. We can just reserve it. Okay, it was created very fast. So now we can just deploy Compute Engine VM. We search Compute Engine in a bar, and in here we do create instance. If you haven't used Compute Engine in your project before, you might need to enable some APIs. It will take a few minutes, but it's after that you can create the instance. So in here we will select the VM instance ready to go solutions from the marketplace. It's easier this way. And I will use the LAMP stack by Bitnami because I used it before. Actually, we can search for LAMP Bitnami. I used it before, and it has good documentation, and it is free to use. So LAMP stands for Linux Apache Web Server. We will need it to run PHP that phpMyAdmin is built on. M stands for MySQL, so this our VM will have a MySQL instance running locally, but we won't use it. But it's nice that it has at least the MySQL client that we can try it for testing, and P stands for PHP, which we will need. So out of this entire stack, we don't need the M, the MySQL, but everything else is exactly what we need. If we scroll down, we can see that it's very affordable. It's $4 a month. So everything looks good. We just go to launch it. Okay, the name doesn't matter. For zone, we need to choose the zone where we created our where we reserved our static IP. So for me, it was US-West 4. Let's see. Yeah, always keep an eye on this price estimate. You can see how it by default it deployed a very expensive machine. So I'm just going to do F1 micro. This brings it down to $5. Yeah, 10 gigabytes should be enough. And now under networking, for external IP, we need to select the IP we just reserved. So we do done, and also in here we need to have these two enabled, both HTTP and HTTPS. And now we can just click deploy. We can see that it was created. They say that it contains warnings. There's nothing to worry in here. It says deployment has resources from a product that is in beta. There's no planned date, and that's totally fine. Okay, so now if we go back to Compute Engine, we can see our VM that is running right now. And if we enter the external IP in the web browser, we will see that our image already has a landing page that links to the documentation. I'm going to open documentation in a new tab. We need to use it. So in here, we can actually add this IP to our DNS zone and configure the SSL termination, the HTTPS. We can see right now that it says not secure. So in here, as I mentioned in the introduction, you will need a DNS hosted zone that we can add records to. So this is my hosted zone, vladsave.com. It's my personal website. So in here, we just need to create a record. I will call it SQL UI. And we just need to paste the external IP in here. Yeah, 10 minutes, that looks good. So we just created. Very nice. So now if we do SQL UI.vladsave.com, it will be different for you, of course, because you have a different domain. We can see that we get the same landing page that that our image has generated. Also, it's using HTTP at the moment. It doesn't have SSL termination, but this is what we are going to do right now. So if we go to the documentation of our image, there's this entry under administration. It says create an SSL certificate for Apache. And they actually have a script included that lets us configure free SSL certificates with Let's Encrypt. So we can just SSH into our VM and run this tool. So if we go back to Compute Engine and we do this SSH browser window client. Okay, so we just copy that command from documentation. It will be an opt bitnami bn cert tool, and we need to run it with sudo. Okay, so now we add the domain list. It will be, I think we did SQL UI. Let's see. Yeah, SQL UI and then your domain. SQL UI. For me, it's vladsave.com, but for you, it will be different. And they're trying to add the www redirection. Because we're using a subdomain, we don't need it. If we did it if we just want to do a certificate on vladsave.com, then the script can add redirect from www.vladsave.com to the one without the W's. But in our case, we don't want it. We just want it on our subdomain. So we will say no in here. There's one more warning. Enable HTTP to HTTPS redirection. Yes, we want this. Yeah, we agree with all the changes. The nice part is that they also add a cron job that automatically renews the certificate every month. Okay, we need to add our email address. And agree with the license, approve the license agreement. Okay, it says it was successful. It says here what we did and how we can revert if we don't like the changes. Very good. So now if we go back to Chrome, to our web browser, here we can change. We can add HTTPS, and then our the subdomain we just did. So HTTPS SQL UI.vladsave.com in my case. And we can see that it no longer says not secure. Now there's the block. It means the the SSL certificate is valid. And we can see it in here. It says connection secure. Certificate is valid. And it was issued by Let's Encrypt. We can also check if the Cloud SQL instance finished provisioning. So in here, yeah, it looks like the spinner is still going. It says almost 15 minutes. And yeah, this one still says instance is being updated. I will skip ahead and be back when the instance is created. Okay, so it's now ready. It says runnable. There's this solid check mark. It took like about 20 minutes, but now it's good to go. So we can also go to databases in here and create a new database. We can call it, let's say, test UI. Click on create. So now we can connect to this SQL instance from our Compute Engine VM. If we go to connections, it will list in here the internal IP address that we are going to use. So if we open again the window SSH into our Compute Engine VM, we can just use the MySQL command line interface. The user will be root. If you want to add users, you go in here to users and you can reset their password, add new users, and so on. And we will do -p because it will prompt us for a password. And we'll also add -h and enter the IP of the database. So in here we add that IP. Now we need to enter the password that we set when we created the database, the one that we saved on a different file. So now we can see we are successfully connected. And if we do show databases, we can see the database we just created, and we can connect to it, connect test UI. Okay, we can create a table, let's say users, name, we'll just make a varchar of 50 characters, and insert a value, insert into users, values, let's say Vlad. Let's add another one, John Doe. And now if we do select star from users, we should see both entries. This is very good. The next step is installing phpMyAdmin on our web server. So I exited the MySQL command line interface with Control-D. And we need to find a place where the websites are hosted. And this one will be in opt Bitnami, Apache. Let's see. So in here, yeah, there's this directory htdocs. So if we go to htdocs, this path is specific to this particular image from Bitnami that we just installed. Different images will have a different path. And in here, if we list htdocs, we see the index.html file. And this is actually the HTML for this page. And if we look, if we do an ls-l, we see that this file is owned by the Bitnami user. So the PHP, we need to set the same owner to the phpMyAdmin after we install it. So now if we just search for phpMyAdmin, download, we see in here they have the download button. And if it says if your download should start soon, if not, please click here. So we can just use this, copy this link address and download it with the wget. But also we don't have permissions in this directory, so we do with sudo wget paste and then the path of the zip file on the internet. So now if we list, we see that we have phpMyAdmin installed, and we just unzip this archive, phpMyAdmin. We can see it extracted the archive in its own directory, so we will move everything up one level in this directory. We also need to remove the index.html file. So we do sudo rm index.html like that. So now we go to phpMyAdmin and we do sudo move star. So everything we move and then 2 dots, we move it one level higher. And we can see that now we have all the files in phpMyAdmin under Bitnami, Apache, htdocs. And yeah, so now, as we said, we need to change the owner of all the files. If we do ls-l, we see that all the files are owned by root because we did it with sudo. So we need to do sudo chown for changing owner, -r, capital R for recursive. And the new owner would be bitnami, and then star. Now if we do ls-l again, we see that the owner is bitnami for everything, which is correct. And one last thing that we need to do, we need to reconfigure the host of our database in phpMyAdmin. And for reconfiguring phpMyAdmin, there's this file, config sample inc.php. Right now it's not being applied because it has the sample name in here. But if we rename it to config.inc.php, then the configuration properties will be taken into account. So now we can edit this file. If we do sudo nano, I'm going to use nano. It's a command line editor. If you know how to use Vim or Emacs, feel free to use them. So we're going to do sudo nano and then config sample inc.php. And in here there's a line called config servers host and localhost. It's set to localhost. We need to change the value of localhost to the IP of our Cloud SQL instance. So it's this one from here. We just paste it in that config field like that. And now we save the file with Control O. The commands are listed. If you haven't used Nano, they are listed here at the bottom. It says Control O. It says file name to write. Yes, that looks good. Enter. And now we can exit. So now we can rename the file. We do sudo mv config sample inc.php. We rename it to config.inc.php. We can list. And now if we can check that it was written correctly. So we can do cat config inc.php. And if we scroll up to the field we just changed, yeah, we see that it has our local IP. So yeah, now if we just go to back to our website, the one that we were trying later with sqlui.vladsave.com. So we just refresh this page. And for username, we need to provide root. And oh, actually, I think we should change the database as well. Let me see. No, maybe it works without. So we just paste the password in here. Like that, and we actually see all the databases, including the one we just created, test UI. So in here we see our table we created, and if we enter the table, we see our two entries, two users, Vlad and John Doe. That's it for today. There are more Google Cloud videos on this channel if you want to continue watching, and if you run into any issues or you have questions, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you.